Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Malte Laass. He's the founder and chief strategy officer at Nuviz. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing is actually really innovative and cool, but maybe before we kind of get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, sure. Well, born and raised in Germany. My accent probably gives me away right away. Born and raised in Germany, moved to Switzerland for pretty much to play pro basketball for a couple of years there. Got my education in Switzerland, and then eventually, I guess, emigrated to the U.S.
Okay, so what did you take in university?
I'm a business major, undergrad in business, and then also an MBA from a school in Switzerland.
Okay, so what made you want to take business in university?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think back in time of what my decisions were when I was, I guess, coming out of high school at 18, 19.
Sure.
I guess just in general interest in trying to understand how companies tick and how businesses around me function. Just general interest in that, and so I think that was kind of the primary reason back then. I don't know if I really had a long thought process coming out of high school, getting into studies. I just kind of fell out in place.
Sure. So how did you make your way to America?
So I actually went to San Diego on an exchange program in the first year of my master's degree.
Okay.
And then ended up falling in love with the city. With my
area.
Fiance, yeah, with the city, with my now fiance, and I guess with the U.S. in general, and then moved back to Germany for a couple of years, worked over there, and then eventually decided it was time for me to move out here to San Diego again, and I guess become a permanent resident. Got you.
No, that's great, man. So walk me through exactly what Nuviz is and why did you decide to found it?
So Nuviz set out to revolutionize the motorcycle experience by bringing head-up display technology and connected driving technology to the motorcycle space.
Okay.
And the company was, I think, started pretty much out of personal interest and background and knowledge in the head-up display and near-eye display space. So myself and my co-founder Marcel, we're both motorcyclists, and Marcel in particular had a long history in the optics and display technology world from his company that he previously founded in Germany and then brought over to the US. So the two of us have been working in the display space for a while, and then I guess there was a personal interest level to bring the near-eye display, head-up display, optics experience into the consumer world, into an area where we both had a personal desire for the technology. And where we both believe that the technology would be adopted and would be used by the consumer, and where there's an obvious need for the technology in the space. There was a time, I think, in 2013 when we first started the ideation process, where Google Glass was introduced, and there was a lot of buzz around the initial steps in the augmented reality world and near-eye display world. And we always thought that the technology in itself is great, but that you need to build technology that is application and purpose built for a specific use case, and we thought that these general application near-eye displays lacked that in the beginning. Sitting at Starbucks, seeing Facebook notifications pop up on your Google Glass to me wasn't very appealing, but we thought that there was an immediate use case for such technology in the motorcycle space, where keeping your eyes on the road, seeing relevant information as a rider, and processing information in an intuitive fashion is critical. So I guess those were the initial stages in the ideation process, and then we've been at it ever since.
Sure. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really cool. So for people that haven't heard of Nuviz, like, how does it kind of work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's when we wanted to bring head-up display technology to a motorcycle rider, we had initially different ideas how that could be accomplished.
Sure.
And then pretty quickly settled on an approach where we bring the experience to any of the existing helmets. So it's an aftermarket approach.
Okay.
Nuviz is a head-up display that mounts onto your existing helmet from a mounting process similar to a GoPro camera, attaches to the external of your chin bar on a motorcycle helmet, and can be taken from helmet to helmet. So motorcycles usually have several helmets, different colors for different riding applications or seasons. So we thought it was a better idea to bring the experience that we wanted to create to all of the helmets that already existed out in the market, as opposed to integrating our technology into a motorcycle helmet and then essentially becoming a helmet manufacturer, as opposed to a technology company that's focused on optics, electronics, and the software and user experience. So that's the path that we've been on, and we're now, I guess, getting ready to finally launch the product.
No, I think that's great. So when you guys, like, obviously you had to have built a kind of a first prototype of the physical thing. Kind of walk me through the early kind of prototyping stage of that. Like, what did you guys use to actually build kind of the first version of this thing?
Well, I guess we had an advantage here too in the beginning, given the background from Marcel in the optics space and just having access to micro displays, to different lenses, to an actual optical lab. So we, I guess, kind of were able to hit the road running and had some optical engineers on the team that understood optics and the human factors behind creating a near-eye display and what it takes. So I think it really started with slapping off-the-shelf displays together and workbench applications of creating different layouts and different setups for the optics itself. So I think that was the hardest part to solve in the beginning, trying to come up with a path for our optical solution that is in a price range where you can sell it to in the consumer electronic price range, and that still creates a user experience that is good enough. Obviously, you're dealing with ambient light, glare, and all these additional complications that all the near-eye displays or head-up displays companies or smart glasses companies are facing. So those were the initial consideration, how they can be overcome. And then, of course, with an external approach like ours, how do you make it resistant enough to withstand debris and pebbles flying against it, and of course, ingress protection. So that was the initial stages, really focused around the optics. And then an additional hurdle that we had is, of course, the mounting approach, how you actually bring this technology to your existing helmet. And as you may know, optics are always very much designed for the specific use case. So depending on how far the optics are away from your eye and where they're positioned in relation to your eye, you need to consider various factors for the optical design, which ultimately needs to have a larger amount of freedom for the rider to adjust the optics in the right way. No helmet is the same, and no eye position within the helmet is the same. So the second step was definitely trying to come up with an industrial design or mechanical design, I should say, to make sure that the display and the optics can be adjusted to all riders and to all helmets that are out there. And that was a lot of just simple trial and error and trying to figure it out how it can be solved.
Sure. And I would also assume that with people that wear, like, say, glasses or contacts, does that factor into how the angle and that stuff? Because, like, I'm assuming that obviously at nighttime it might be easier to see than the daytime because you don't have, like, sun coming at you. Is that something you guys had to factor in as well?
You would think that optics, contact lenses or regular glasses play a role. They actually don't, because the virtual image in our case is designed to be in focus at 30 feet in front of the rider. Although the actual optics are just a few inches away from your eye, the user looks through the display and sees the image in focus at 30 feet. So if you require glasses to be able to see in focus, while riding a motorcycle, then of course you would wear glasses that would make the roads appear in focus at 30 feet or beyond. Then those glasses will also work to see our image in focus. So you don't have to wear reading glasses to see our display, which you wouldn't wear as a rider being on the road. So that's that's not a problem. But then, of course, there are considerations with regards to polarized glasses, and there are certain things that you can't build into the optical canal that would essentially make the image invisible for polarized. If a writer were to wear polarized glasses, so that's something that we have to overcome. And then you already mentioned, of course, the ambient light in general, and then in the nighttime writing experience, there's less ambient light. Therefore, we actually don't run the LEDs at the highest brightness level, and actually need to dim them down to not blind the writer in a sense, or overwhelm them with something that is too bright. So we have an ambient light sensor built in that automatically reduces the brightness level of the display. If you go into a tunnel or into an area of the road where there's a lot of tree coverage, or if you go into nighttime writing, then the LEDs will dim down and bring it to a level that is similar to your surrounding area. But for the daytime writing, of course, achieving the brightness that is required to still see the image and not have enough contrast for the information that you want to show on the head-up display, those are definitely some key considerations. And we're working or we're using technology that has been used in the military space for decades and is known for being very, very bright. It's a reflective display technology, so you can the more you crank up the LEDs, the more brightness you can create on the display, and then ultimately the display just reflects all the light that you bring from the LED onto the display. So that's a way that we're able to create the brightness level that we need for daytime writing. And of course, writers tend to go out when it's sunny and nice outside.
Sure.
Or are more prone to go outside when it's nice and sunny outside. And so that's definitely one of the conditions that we needed to design for.
Got you. So how does it, why 30 feet? Is that like a known kind of distance, or why did you guys decide that?
That's kind of the distance where you as a writer are focused on for the immediate dangers. If there's a 2x4 on the road or something else that you really want to dodge and drive around, that's kind of distance where your eyes are focused at. And then so that makes sense that the focal length where the potential dangers are and the display is at the same length. So what you're trying to avoid is the accommodation from your eyes from looking from something far down the road to looking to refocusing to something that's close by. So 30 feet is kind of in that medium range, and from 30 feet onwards, it is actually almost perceived as infinity for your eyes. So the accommodation from 30 feet to infinity is very minimal for your pupil, whereas from 30 feet coming closer to like 1 feet or 3 feet or so forth takes a lot more. If you look out and you see you focus at something a little bit further away, and then something even further away, there's very limited accommodation required. Whereas looking at your desktop screen and then looking up against the wall, there's already more required there. So that those were some of the human factors consideration that came into play, and then of course the eye box and field of view and all these other optical parameters.
Sure. There's this is all fascinating to me because there's so much stuff that goes into this that people don't even think about. Like they put on their helmet, they go, but there's so much that you guys thought about and put into this thing to make it almost like a seamless experience, right, for the user, and I love that. So I'm curious. Yeah, and go ahead. Sorry.
I think the most important part is not just the optics, but then of course also what information you display on the optics and what the user experience feels and looks like. So our credo is definitely that less is more when it comes to showing information to the writer.
Sure.
We only want to display relevant information and contextual information. There won't be any Facebook notifications or Twitter feed popping up. It's really limited to critical data that you as a writer already have access to in some other form or fashion on the bike, and designed in a way that does not create any cognitive overload, and it's intuitive to navigate through. So I think those are key considerations. And our goal is to augment the writing experience, if not to change the writing experience, and enhance it in that sense. So minimalism is definitely key when it comes to the user interface and the user experience design.
Sure, and I want to get more into that in a second, but is it, could this be considered like kind of like distractive riding, or is it legal to have kind of something like that you're showing people, or the fact that like it's not really any different than me looking at like a dashboard in my car?
No, it's definitely legal to use a product like this, and there's a reason why head-up displays are now emerging in the automotive space as an either OEM integrated display, or now of course as an aftermarket display that you can put on your dashboard, and so the advantages of having information in your direct line of sight are known, and that's why it's been in aviation, in the military aviation, and commercial aviation, and now in automobiles for decades, and it's now of course moving into a space where arguably the motorcyclist benefits from the technology the most. So from a legality perspective, it's definitely fine, and from a distraction perspective, it's certainly you need to consider what you show to the rider, and need to be cognizant about the information that you want to display and how it's displayed. But again, we're keeping that very limited and very minimal. So it's essentially alphanumeric information, and we can talk about the features in a second here. But it's not overloading or in any way distracting to the rider. And our user testing has been very favorable, and we're actually conducting research studies now also with universities in Europe as well as in the US to prove, I guess, the human factor's influence on this and how it's perceived versus other technologies. Riders mount their navigation system or their smartphones onto the handlebars, and how does the head-up display experience in general compare against the traditional ways of showing or displaying information to the rider? And so initial results, this is definitely very favorable for Nuviz and the head-up display experience.
Well, sure. Like it has to be better because you're not looking down. Like if you're like if you mount your smartphone, you're looking down, right? But with you guys, you're just looking forward, and you're showing information.
That's correct. And that's correct. And then on top of that, our user interface designed for this high-speed application. Arguably, a lot of the apps that you could run on your smartphone are designed for you walking around downtown, with Yelp in your hand or Google Maps in your hand, not necessarily designed for the motorcycle application and the amount of information that you can process as a rider on the bike. So we stripped down, when we talk about navigation, for example, we don't show you the full detailed maps that would be available for you on a mobile phone or on a desktop. It's very much trimmed down and simplified.
Sure. So we've kind of talked around this a little bit. So what types of well, before we get to that, how does your device actually get and be powered? It's Bluetooth to my phone, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So we, from a control perspective, we actually have a handlebar mounted controller. That controller is Bluetooth Low Energy to the Nuviz display. And from the connectivity from Nuviz to your smartphone, that's also via Bluetooth.
Okay, so I can see it, and then I can control the notifications from my handlebars? Is that what you just said?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So we have a handlebar mounted controller. It's up and down controls plus 4 hotkeys to navigate through the user interface. And the UI paradigm that we've developed, we believe, is very simplistic and very easy to learn for a rider. So it's essentially up and down to go between the main screens and main views or features. And then there are 2 buttons on the control that are correlated to 2 input fields on the display itself. So I guess, like talking about it right now is a little bit difficult to understand over the phone or without actually seeing it, but it's definitely very intuitive. And we have a hotkey on the controller as well to activate the video camera to take photo or video. So we've tried to make this as simple as possible and as common as possible. Of course, riders are already used to having handlebar controls for all of the instruments or all the functionality that their bikes have. So we're just extending that functionality with our controller. Of course, early on, we also looked into voice commands, since we do have a headset and a microphone that the user can install in the helmets for audio and communication features. But I think at this point, the quality of voice commands within this high ambient noise environment inside of a helmet is just not good enough yet to create a frustration-free user experience.
Sure.
So for the time being, we opted for the control and I guess physical input device versus the audio commands. But that said, we are definitely going to roll out additional voice command features as well as the technology and voice recognition software improves.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's actually kind of really interesting in itself, right? That you guys made it was probably a tough decision to decide to not include that right out of the gate. But you're right. Like if the hardware doesn't really support it yet, then it doesn't really make sense to include it. That makes a lot of sense to me. So what kind of information do you actually show to me while I'm riding?
Yeah, the key feature that our focus group interviews from the very, very beginning revealed were, of course, that navigation is one of the key features.
Sure.
So that's the I guess the key experience that we enable, and then of course we're able to display just speed as well as time. We have communication features, so you're able to take calls, make calls, actually see who's calling. If you're interested in listening to music, of course we are also able to stream music from your smartphone to the display, and you have very simplistic input for which song is playing and skipping the song, pausing the song. We have a camera integrated, so you can take point of view photos and videos and capture your experience and your writing experience. And the images are actually automatically sent to your smartphone. So whenever you pull over at a coffee shop or at home, the photos that you've taken on your ride are automatically in your library on your smartphone. And then for the videos, you can either get them over Wi-Fi when you connect to your home Wi-Fi, or just take out the SD card and pull them over onto your computer.
Sure. So did you guys have to build your own kind of apps for this, or are you just walk me through kind of how I use my smartphone to connect to your device, your headset?
Yeah, correct. So there's a Nuviz application that is your gatekeeper to our hardware.
Okay.
But in the future, we'll also function as a standalone application for you as a rider to connect with other riders and track your experiences and share your experiences. So it's I think at this point for the initial launch, I guess what you would consider a companion app, but the backend functionality is already built in to support more and more features moving forward.
Gotcha.
And for us, I think very importantly, as riders, you often go out and drive in the middle of nowhere, out of cell phone reception. And for riders in Europe, you cross several countries within a day of riding,
right.
Where you would then encounter roaming charges. So the navigation that we have built in is actually a standalone navigation engine using offline maps. So you don't have to stay within cell phone connectivity to actually reroute or update your maps or choose a different location. So that's I guess the display itself, or the Nuviz as a product on your helmet, is connected to your smartphone, but it doesn't have to be. So if you as a rider go out in the middle of nowhere, it can function as a standalone device. And from an electronics perspective, it's essentially a smartphone minus the cell phone connectivity chipsets.
Got you. Okay, interesting. So you guys built the software that runs on the actual device then too?
Correct. Yeah, it's Android based, and so we got a couple of software engineers or firmware engineers on the team. So there's I think you can tell there's a lot of pieces that are required to bring this together.
Sure.
Optics is one element, but the software and backend and the firmware on the controller, firmware on the head-up display, and then of course the smartphone application, iOS, Android. A lot of pieces to bring the user experience together and.
Sure. So you mentioned Android and iOS. Obviously, you're supporting both platforms.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and obviously, I just for everyone and yourself, I prefer Android over iOS. That's my kind of daily phone. I have an iPhone as well, so I use both platforms on a daily basis. But and I'm not getting kind of political on this, whether you're an Android or iOS guy. It was, it was probably a lot easier for you guys to work Android to Android than kind of Android to iOS and pull notifications out of iOS, just because I know like certain things Apple won't allow you to do. And like a good example of what I'm basing this on has nothing to do with you guys at all. It was like, I was reading the Android Wear 2.0, which is their like Google's version of like the Apple Watch software. Like there's a lot that you can actually pair an Android watch with an iPhone, but like Apple won't let you actually pull a bunch of stuff from the iPhone. So like you guys being a third-party developer, it's got to be a lot harder to integrate with iOS than Android. Did you guys experience that?
I think that is a question that our head of software would be more capable of speaking to.
Okay.
And the challenges or lack thereof that he and his team are encountering on a daily basis.
Sure.
Personally, I'm an iPhone user.
Okay. But do you get different notifications?
Make sure that the team is working on an iOS application that works very smoothly.
Sure. But do you get different types of notifications, or you guys are trying to make them pretty much similar between the two platforms?
The goal is definitely to create an experience that is uniform across both platforms.
Okay.
And when it comes to the notifications, again, we're trying to limit any useless notifications to the writer. And so it's essentially incoming and outgoing calls that we would display.
Oh, so it's irrelevant.
Yeah. Incorrect. Yeah, we're not even showing text messages
okay.
that would occur. We're still evaluating whether we're going to show message receipts from mom, but then it is up to you whether you want to pull over and read the text message from your mom, or whether you think it can wait for another hour or so while you're on the bike. But we definitely won't show you the actual written text on the display. Of course, reading it to you at one point is a different topic. And those will be some of the customizations that you as a writer can also could do, and kind of customize the experience to what you as a writer prefer. For example, I tend to usually write without headsets in, and don't like to listen to music or even have communication inside of my helmet. So if you don't want that, I personally prefer to just have the visual cues and having the navigation and information available to me, but actually not listen to Siri or Google tell me where to go. So that very much depends on the preferences of the writer, and we're trying to make our platform customizable to a certain extent to cater to all these preferences.
Got you. No, that makes total sense. And like, I think the thing is, I know just like getting iMessages can be tricky off iOS. So, but yeah, if you guys aren't even showing them, it makes a lot of sense. So I get that. And you're right. Like everybody's going to pick and choose what they want to see or not see, or listen to music or not listen to music. So I think that's really great. So when are you guys launching this thing, and when can people actually buy this thing?
Yeah, we're getting ready now for ramp up. Right now, we're looking at a May-June timeframe. Okay. To actually ship the product. I guess just in time for the writing season 2017.
Perfect.
The majority of our team is actually, or the majority of our engineering team is based in Finland.
Okay.
So of course the guys over there are very excited to also get the product into the European market as quickly as possible, and we're actually working right now for a somewhat simultaneous launch in Europe as well as in the US.
Got you. So how is working with having an office in America and having an office overseas? Like how's that kind of dynamic, building a physical hardware product? There's got to be a bunch of challenges around just even time zones, never mind building something physically. So how are you guys kind of working through those challenges?
The 10-hour time difference definitely makes for a lot of early mornings or late night calls. That is I guess one of the key disadvantages. Sure. But other than that, we're definitely very happy with our location in Finland. Okay. Maybe for your background information, as you know, Microsoft acquired Nokia.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, and then quickly after that wrote that acquisition off. and of course, as part of that write-off, also laid off thousands of engineers around the world. A lot of them actually here in San Diego at the former Nokia/Microsoft mobile phone development center, and then of course even more so in Europe, in Finland in particular. And we were able, when we heard about all these layoffs that were going to take place at the end of 2015, were able to jump on board and essentially recruit our engineering team in one big swoop in Finland, and get guys on board that have developed consumer electronics for decades, and have experience of taking a product from ideation to the market, and also the in-market support, and we were definitely blessed to have the ability to kind of pick the best guys from Microsoft/Nokia, and that work has been great with the guys, and I think a lot of the U.S. and California entrepreneurs in particular can share the pain that finding loyal guys that stick with the company for a long time is somewhat challenging to find here.
Sure.
The churn rate is crazy in California, and so far we haven't lost anybody in Finland, and the guys are staying on board, and as I said, are extremely qualified. So of course, there are challenges from a communication perspective, but the good thing is that the guys were used to the setup before. As I mentioned, there was a big engineering site in San Diego for Nokia, and then engineering in Finland, and then contract manufacturing in Asia. So the guys on the team are definitely used to working in those 3 time zones, and with tools these days, you can get a lot of the stuff done. And of course, then every once in a while, it makes sense to get together in person. And I'm actually traveling over to Finland on Friday.
That was going to be my next question to you, is like, how often do you have to go to Finland, or how often are they coming to kind of California?
Well, personally, I'm trying to be there at least once a quarter. And my mom lives in Berlin, so I'm always trying to combine a trip to Berlin for the weekend with a business trip to Finland throughout the week, and then back the weekend after. So that's, I guess, also a somewhat personal perk for me to have the chance to put those quick Germany stopovers in there on the way to Finland.
Sure. No, I think that's great. And just like the more and more thinking about kind of what you just mentioned about kind of recruiting a bunch of guys from Nokia, like you guys are basically building like a smartphone, right? Without a SIM card, because it has a screen, it has like a bunch of stuff, right? Like, and it's basically it's running an OS. It's interesting. I didn't really. That's actually really cool that you guys are basically doing that and then syncing that with your phone, pulling kind of obviously data between the 2 devices. But I'm curious to know then, how do you guys, like, did you guys have to, you took Android and you obviously probably had to modify it a bunch. So how do you push updates to the actual device?
Via the app.
Okay.
Firmware updates, you would essentially download via the app and then push the firmware update from your smartphone to Nuviz.
Okay.
That's the current modus.
No, that makes the most sense to do it that way. I'm curious about what's battery life on the device.
Yeah, that's a good question, and was one of the key considerations when it comes to finding the right compromise between form factor, weight, and of course user experience and duration of the battery.
Sure.
So right now we're in the 5 to 6 hour time frame. Of course, depending on how much HD video you're taking and how much telephony you're conducting. But that's the average use time. And the batteries are replaceable and rechargeable, so you can easily bring a second battery on your super extended rides, and then of course charge them at home easily.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually quite interesting. So I know you guys haven't kind of technically launched yet, but what are you guys looking to do kind of for maybe the fall or next ride season? Like, is it kind of a new version of the hardware, just kind of focus on the software, roll out kind of new features and display notifications, or or what are you guys looking forward to do kind of after you guys get your first version kind of out there and people start using this thing?
Yeah, so I think the software will definitely continue to evolve heavily. As I already indicated earlier, we have a roadmap of some exciting features that we will roll out independent from any hardware updates. And I think that's also a way for us to keep the product feel and look fresh on a continuous basis. Even if a user is not inclined to update the hardware right away. So there are some additional features that are coming this year, and we have I can't really speak about which features those will be.
Sure.
But some around the connectivity and ride tracking part and connectivity part, and then also some of the accident detection, for example, and then a big part will be connectivity to motorcycles. So the vehicle to head-up display connectivity is something that we're working on in order to get additional information from the bike onto the display, such as RPM, gear position, actual engine speed from the actual vehicle. So those are some things that I believe will increase the or further enhance the experience as the display actually ties into your bike itself. And then on the hardware side, we are working on the roadmap right now for generation 1.5 and generation 2, and there's some cool ideas floating around.
Sure. No, I think that's really great. So where are you guys kind of getting your manufacturing done? Are you guys doing it overseas? That's probably the most common way, or like where are you guys getting these things actually manufactured?
Yeah, the overseas is essentially the only way that you can go to get the product in the consumer electronics space into the price point that makes sense, right?
Sure.
So we have a contract manufacturer in Taiwan, tier one contract manufacturer that is very familiar with the space and manufactures similar devices for not head-up displays, but similar wearables and consumer electronic devices for a lot of the high-end brands in the world. So that is done in Asia.
Got you. So how did you guys find them? Did somebody on your team work with them before? Did you guys do a bunch of homework, or how did you guys find them?
Exactly. That was one of the additional very favorable perks of recruiting our team in Finland. We're essentially using the same contract manufacturer that Nokia and Microsoft used in the years before.
Gotcha.
So the guys on the team, our general manager in Finland, actually worked with the ODM director for Nokia and lived in Taiwan for 3 years before joining Nuviz. So he's got a lot of personal relationships to our contract manufacturer over there, and I think that was actually one of the only reasons why we were able to get with a tier one contract manufacturer from the beginning, because we had those established relationships from the Nokia and Microsoft times.
Got you. So have you been to the manufacturing facility yourself?
I personally have not been there yet. I know that the guys in Finland travel over there on a regular basis.
Sure.
And I definitely will try to visit the facilities at one point as well. But so far, that's best handled by the guys that know the engineers on the contract manufacturer sides for years. So no need for me to stick my nose in that.
No, that makes total sense. I'm always just kind of curious to know what people's experience are when they actually go to visit those places, because like they can be totally different. So I thought I would ask. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and Nuviz.
So I think the best source right now for additional information on Nuviz is on our website, ridenuviz.com, and that's pretty much the source for any additional information, and will also be the shop moving forward. So once we're in market, we're doing a direct to customer model where initially you will be able to get the product on Nuviz only.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin. Much appreciated.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.